Hi, everyone. Welcome to the show. A new blockbuster allegation that could turn the Alec Baldwin shooting case into an intentional murder investigation. We'll have that coming up. But first, great night for Republicans, bad night for Democrats. That was the analysis you heard again and again on cable news last night and today. Now, that happens to be true. It was a very good night for the GOP and a bad night for the Democrats. But it seems no one's really talking about the fact that it was a big night for political moderates and moderation. Anti-police candidates lost in really liberal areas like Seattle, where Republican Ann Davis invested police abolitionist Nicole Thomas Kennedy for city attorney. And in Buffalo, where socialist India Walton lost the mayor's race to a write-in candidate. Even the effort to eliminate the Minneapolis Police Department got shot down with 56% of ballots cast rejecting the proposal. These are things moderates of both parties should celebrate. And the suburban voters who went from Obama to Trump to Biden and back to Republican Glenn Youngkin in Virginia held all the power. They even made the New Jersey governor's race this close. And they're the ones to reckon with going into 2022 and 2024. This was a rebuke of left-wing agendas, which was what Youngkin campaigned on. But what he did not campaign on in the general election was Donald Trump, who is not popular with a suburban moderate power base. Now, while Trump was quick to take credit for the win, the reality, of course, is that once he got the nomination, Youngkin distanced himself from the former president as he hit policies like critical race theory and taxes. Youngkin never even invited Trump to Virginia and avoided making personal appearances with the ex-president. Youngkin's campaign wasn't unlike Mitt Romney's 2018 Senate campaign, embracing modern Republican policies while ignoring Donald Trump. In fact, the Virginia GOP deserves enormous political credit for getting rid of the typical primaries, which lead to more extreme candidates. Instead, they held something called an unassembled convention, which involved party members casting ranked choice votes at 39 drive-by polling places across the state. If Youngkin had to campaign on a more radical platform for months ahead of the general election, well, maybe McAuliffe would have had more success trying to paint Youngkin as a Trump acolyte instead of the center-right businessman who won the election. In the end, this election wasn't about Donald Trump. It was for governor of Virginia, not for a Washington-based position. It was moderates and Virginia issues that mattered. Many on the left now claiming that the debate surrounding critical race theory being taught in public schools drove so many parents to the polls. But when voters said education was their top-line issue in this election, they probably didn't mean CRT, which isn't even taught in Virginia. But more of them probably meant COVID's impact on public education. Many suburban public schools in the state went almost a year without in-person learning, and teachers' unions consistently supported keeping schools closed because of the pandemic. And parents were upset, as evidenced by a significant drop in public school enrollment in the critical county of Fairfax, for example. Youngkin also sweetened the deal for suburban moms, promising to boost teacher pay and build 20 more charter schools, among other education-based promises. Youngkin had an 11% edge over McAuliffe among voters who had education as their top priority. So maybe I'm wrong on this, but maybe the media needs to stop focusing so much on Trump and Republicans versus Democrats and instead focus on the fact that this election and many of the others around the country was decided by moderates who just want things done in what they view as a sensible way. Here to tell me if I'm wrong is Jessica Taylor, the Senate and Governor's editor for the Cook Political Report. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Appreciate it. Her latest piece is called Republicans Make Inroads into Blue States, a Flashing Red Light for Democrats in 2022. So, you're talking again about this, what this means, right? More broadly, nationally, what it means for Democrats. Do you think I'm wrong when I'm saying that the focus, in my view, should be on the moderates rather than just on the Republicans versus Democrats?
Well, ultimately, a Republican or a Democrat had to win, the race in Virginia and the race in New Jersey. But it's those independents that we have seen that had been moving away from Republicans, moving away from Trumpism specifically, that this was really the first test of whether or not Democrats could hold on to those voters. And it told us last night that they're not happy with the direction of the Democratic Party either. So, it's independents more in my mind, because when we look back at the exit polling from 2020, just a year ago, Biden carried independents by almost 20 points in Virginia. Last night, Youngkin won them by 9-10 points or so in the exit polling. And so they've had a big swing there. And these are people that aren't wedded to one party. You can have, moderate Democrats, you can have moderate Republicans, but I think it's people that, and especially in governor's races, people are often voting more so for the candidate necessarily than, if this were a Senate race last night, I think it could have turned out differently, because our elections have become so parliamentary that you're voting for who you want to have in control of the House or the Senate. But governors, Vermont has a Republican governor. Yeah.
Right. But let me ask you about this, though. Because so many people are talking about Youngkin's win, possible roadmap for Republicans moving forward. This is the way they got to campaign. Some people calling it Trump light, whatever it is. But it just seems to me that in this case, where you didn't have an actual primary, right? Mm-hmm. Where he didn't have to go radical to win, that it makes it different than a lot of the other elections that are going to happen around the country where there are primaries. And as a result, you're going to have to live and die by what you say in the primaries. And so I wonder whether maybe this isn't as much of a bellwether as everyone claims it is.
Well, you're exactly right on that instance that Youngkin, I think, did the way that this had to be conducted, not just a convention. We've seen conventions in Virginia in the past. Oftentimes, the more extreme candidates have won. That happened in 2013, which was when McAuliffe won the governor's race and Democrats won down the ballot. But this time, it was a little different because of COVID. I remember talking to Republicans back then. They were worried the fact that they weren't going to have a primary, that voters were going to see this as insular, sort of an insidery process. They were going to lose voters. But the main reason they decided to do this was because there was one particular more extreme candidate that was going to run, State Senator Amanda Chase. She refers to herself as Trump in heels. She's very sort of Marjorie Taylor Greenish. And she was going to be a real problem. She would have forced someone like Youngkin to the right and sort of made all of the other candidates sort of answer a more extreme position. She's defended the January 6th insurrection and different things. So that would have been a real problem. But by holding this type of convention, not only did they get Youngkin, who didn't have a political background, he didn't have any votes to point to, he was an outsider. He also brought his own money to the race, and that was really key too. So he was able to fund really positive ads as soon as the general election started. He could frame himself positively, versus you had Terry McAuliffe, former governor. Now in Virginia, you can't run for 2 consecutive terms. He left office and was running again, but he was essentially the de facto incumbent. And then when you see where Democratic fortunes, and particularly Joe Biden's numbers are, yeah.
The other thing that I wondered about, though, you mentioned something that made me think of the fact that he was an outsider, right? Everyone loves to characterize outsiders. Everyone loves to hate politicians, et cetera. But Terry McAuliffe really was the ultimate politician, right? Everything about him screams politician. And I wonder, when we talk about sort of what the future holds, whether that's going to lead more people to say, let's get people, more of these business people, particularly Republicans, saying, let's get more people who are in business running for office.
You saw a lot of Republicans running for office that were just like that in the 2010 Tea Party wave. There was this sort of big push for outsiders. But then Trump was an outsider too. And so I think there's some people that gives them pause, maybe not an outsider for the very top job in the country. But, for governor, oftentimes we do see businesses as a good stepping stone to that. So that's not necessarily out there. But, you're right to go back to what you asked before too. I want to point out in Senate races, we're already seeing, because of Trump, because they can't really, they need his endorsement. They want his endorsement in order to win. They are being, in many places in Arizona and Ohio and Missouri, you're seeing candidates really run so far to the right and really kiss Trump's ring. And that could hurt them, especially in key places like Arizona, where prime opportunity for Republicans to win back a seat. But if the environment's like it is right now for Democrats, if it's going to be a red wave, that may not matter.
Right. But, Democrats have been very good historically at eating their own and ruining their chances by sort of focusing on purity. And now we're seeing some of that same attitude from the Republican Party as well. Jessica Taylor, thank you so much for coming on the show. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Coming up, in the Alec Baldwin shooting investigation, an attorney for the film's armorer is throwing the word sabotage around, claiming someone may have intentionally brought those live rounds onto the set. This could be a game changer. Coming up. Welcome back. An NFL star arrested on felony DUI charge after a woman and her dog are killed in a car crash in Vegas. Now, the Las Vegas Raiders wide receiver Henry Ruggs appeared in a Clark County court earlier today, where prosecutors revealed some stunning details about the crash that killed 23-year-old Tina Tinter.
Defendant was traveling at beyond an excessive rate of speed. Eyewitnesses put the defendant at over 100 miles an hour. We were able to confirm through investigation, through a download of the airbag control module from his vehicle, that at 2.5 seconds prior to impact, he was traveling at 156 miles per hour, northbound on Rainbow Boulevard. I would note that in my 24...
Could you hear that? 156 miles an hour. At impact, they estimated it was about 127 in a residential neighborhood. Now, the prosecutor, Eric Bauman, also said that Ruggs' blood alcohol level after the crash was 0.16, twice the legal limit in Nevada. But whatever the speed, a recent state Supreme Court ruling in Nevada will prevent Ruggs from being charged with murder. Last September, the court ruled that, quote, the state may not charge a defendant with second-degree murder for a death resulting from driving under the influence. Now, the DA has talked about lobbying the state legislature to draft a bill reversing the decision. But for now, it seems though Ruggs will not face the most serious charges. As it stands, he could face up to 46 years for a charge of DUI causing death and reckless driving. Already, Henry Ruggs has been released by the Raiders, and if he posts $150,000 bail, he'd be subject to the highest level of electronic monitoring. With us from our New York station, WPIX, sports reporter Justin Walters. Attorney David Katz is also with us. Justin, thanks for coming in. Appreciate it. All right, so for those who aren't huge football fans, 22 years old, highly touted player for the Raiders. What else?
Yeah, star receiver for the Raiders. He was a top wide receiver from last year's draft. He's leading them in receptions, and the Raiders are actually having a good year despite all the turmoil. They're 5-2 right now, going to be playing the New York Giants. But like you said, these details are so disturbing, and it was so avoidable because you could have been in a rideshare service.
And so a lot of people are going to be asking about the NFL, right? It seems that he's not playing for the Raiders right now, but that doesn't mean he couldn't play for another team. And you were telling me that there is some precedent for something like this happening.
Yeah, they're kind of isolated incidents, but you have Leonard Little for the Rams. He was suspended, I believe, 8 games. And then you have Dante Stolworth about a decade ago, was suspended for a year for DUI manslaughter. There were deaths in both of those situations. In this, it's a lot different. There was a gun found in the car, 156 miles per hour in a residential area, and he rear-ended. Everyone that knows when you're driving, anytime you hit someone in the back of a car, you're usually the victim, or pardon, usually the person that's going to be causing this damage.
And also, I didn't realize this, but you were pointing out also that the NFL has sort of a rideshare program, that you've actually been in one of these, where anyone who's a player can call and get a free ride.
Yeah, I have a few friends in the NFL, and it's so avoidable. We're now in 2021. You can enjoy yourself out there and have a rideshare service that will pick you up. It is free of charge. They have an amount of money that is allotted to them. And I've been in this car. I know he had his girlfriend with him, who is the mother of his child. She could have been in this car. They hold up to at least 12 people. This person will stay in an area for you. You shoot them a text or call, and they will pick you up.
David Katz, let me ask you about this Nevada law and DUI not being able to face a murder charge. Is this unusual?
Well, I'm a former federal prosecutor, so we didn't have this, but I'm a criminal defense attorney now, and I've never had a case that's this egregious, and that's what the judge said at the hearing today. 156 miles an hour in a residential neighborhood. Then he slowed down in the 2.5 seconds, so the impact was actually over 120 miles an hour in the middle of the night, 3 o'clock in the morning in a residential area. It's the kind of case that if they did have a second-degree murder charge in Nevada, I believe he would certainly be charged with it. But as it is, he's facing over 20 years, and he's facing 20 years in prison on one count. As you say, he's facing over 40 years altogether. And despite the fact that he has good criminal defense counsel, I think he's going to prison in this case. I don't think he's going to be playing for any team in the NFL anytime soon or while he's in his prime, because I think he is going to go to prison with these kinds of allegations.
Real quick, Justin, any public support for him, or I think everyone's staying away?
There's probably people staying away. A few teammates did say he needs love right now. Derek Carr, the star quarterback for the team, said he needs a hug and love.
All right. Justin Walters, thanks so much for coming in. Great to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
David Katz, appreciate it. Coming up.
Stand by!
Caught on police body cam, a traffic pursuit leads to a standoff when a man pointing a gun at officers refuses to drop it, despite being told to do so more than 60 times. Coming up. Time for our police cam segment showing the dangers law enforcement face every day. We're seeing what happened in Los Angeles today as police chased a reckless driver in a Honda Accord who refused to pull over. The pursuit went from a surface street onto the I-5 expressway. The driver, Christopher Garcia, crashed on an off-ramp and got out of the car with a gun.
Hey, it's your hand. Hey, drop the gun! Drop the gun! Drop the gun, dude! Officer needs help, he's got a gun. Drop the gun! Drop the gun, dude! Hey, get cover! Get cover! Get cover! Drop the gun, man! Drop the gun! Hey, get cover, dude.
What street is this?
Get cover! Hey!
What street is this, man?
Hold on. Drop the gun! Drop the gun!
Drop the gun!
Drop the gun, man! Drop it, dude! I don't want to shoot you, bro!
Officers called for Garcia to drop the gun more than 60 times in 3 minutes. Police also told the suspect they didn't want to shoot him, but then Garcia pointed the weapon at police.
6823, show us on the hood. Stand by! Get up here!
Now, this is a zoomed-in image from the body cam showing Garcia pointing the gun towards police. He was taken to the hospital where he was pronounced dead. Investigators later found the gun that had been pointed was a realistic-looking Colt replica BB gun. Joining me now is Police Chief Anthony Paparo from Yeadon, Pennsylvania. Chief, thanks for coming back on the show. Appreciate it. All right, so in the end, whether this was a real gun or not, the issue for officers on that scene is the fact that it looks real and that he is pointing it at police, correct?
That is correct. There's no way, especially from that distance, for officers to know whether or not it's a BB gun or a replica or even a starter pistol or a gun that's used to light a fire, for lack of a better word.
Now, police asked dozens of times for the suspect to drop the gun. Let's listen to that again.
Drop it, bro! Drop it, man! Come on, man! Just drop it, dude! Drop it, man! Drop it, dude!
Officers shot when the suspect pointed the weapon at him. Do you think this is a situation where he wanted the police to shoot him?
You know, when I looked at the video, it was something that came to mind for me that this possibly was a suicide by cop. I got to hand it to the officer that was in control there, the very first officer. I mean, he did everything in his power in an effort to de-escalate it and actually talk to the guy like he was a human being and not treat him like a criminal at that point. His efforts, I felt, especially going along as long as he did, I mean, close to 3.5 minutes before a shot was fired. And he was put in a predicament where he had to act not only to protect himself, but the officers that were with him. I also got the impression that this officer that was running the show, he may have had a little bit more on his mind because it seemed like the officer that was with him may have been a rookie, to be honest with you, the way he stood there in the doorway in harm's way, and the officer was squared away enough to tell him to get cover while he was talking to the guy to keep distracting him. But he was forced to do what he had to do.
And one of the things I think that people forget is that when you are just off of a chase like this, the adrenaline is going, right? For anyone, cop, not cop. It's kicked in. And so the challenge for a police officer in this situation is to, as much as possible, keep your calm and not overreact.
Yeah, and this officer was outstanding. I mean, he directed everything. He was directing the other officer. He was directing the other officer to have responding officers for backup. He was talking to the suspect in an effort to try and de-escalate him and get him to come forward and just drop the gun. I mean, he was doing the mere fact that he was telling him that if he approached him, that he was going to have to shoot him. He was basically laying the groundwork to let him know that, hey, you can't do something that's going to force me to act. And that's what the suspect wound up doing. And again, not knowing the victimology of the suspect, but it sounds like a possibility that could be a suicide by cop episode here.
Yeah. Chief Paparo, thank you very much for coming on the show. Really appreciate it.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Coming up, the Supreme Court of the United States taking up one of its biggest gun rights cases ever. The decision could have a big impact on who can carry in public places around the country. There was a big Supreme Court argument today that could fundamentally change gun laws in states around the country. The court heard arguments in a case brought by New York gun owners challenging century-old restrictions on carrying concealed handguns in public, basically taking on a law that requires gun owners to show what's called proper cause or a special need to carry a handgun in public for self-defense. Now, they say it violates the Second Amendment to the United States Constitution. But first, let's take a quick step back. There was a landmark opinion in 2008 known as the Heller opinion. The 5-4 decision, for the first time in legal history, established that the Second Amendment protects an individual's right to own a weapon. Today, the question is, how hard can a state make it to carry a concealed weapon for self-defense in public? First, Paul Clement, arguing against that New York law, said his clients should have a constitutional right to carry handguns in New York City without providing that proper cause.
The text of the Second Amendment enshrines a right not just to keep arms, but to bear them. And the relevant history and tradition, exhaustively surveyed by this court in the Heller decision, confirm that the text protects an individual right to carry firearms outside the home for purposes of self-defense. Indeed, that history is so clear that New York no longer contests that carrying a handgun outside of the home for purposes of self-defense is constitutionally protected activity. But that concession dooms New York's law, which makes it a crime for a typical law-abiding New Yorker to exercise that constitutional right.
Now, meanwhile, New York Solicitor General argued that New York has a right to make their own rules, saying in part, New York is not an outlier in the extent to which the state restricts the ability to carry firearms in public, and it's not an outlier in asking a licensed applicant to show good cause for a carry license. Now, based on the justices' questions, they sure seem ready to strike down this New York law. So if that happens, what does that mean legally? Joining us now is Daryl Miller, professor at Duke University's Center for Firearms Law. Thank you very much for coming on the show. Appreciate it. So is it fair to say that depending on the ruling here, that this case could erase most of the toughest gun control laws in the country?
Oh, absolutely. I think that's fair to say. If the court strikes down New York's law, it imperils similar laws that are in states like Massachusetts and New Jersey and Maryland and California, for example, states that cover about 80 million people or about a quarter of the population. And I think it would be fair to say that if the court rules that you have a Second Amendment right to carry a firearm simply on a desire to do so for self-defense, that you'll see more guns in more places in America.
Now, you know, there's a lot of debate occasionally about whether there should be what's called assault weapon legislation. Comes up, goes away. It existed for a while. Will the ruling here have any impact on that kind of legislation?
Not directly. That is, this particular case is more about whether you can carry a firearm with you concealed on your person. The question you're asking has to do with a second kind of question, which is what kind of weapons are protected by the term arms in the Second Amendment. And there are cases that are percolating in lower courts right now that the court might end up granting cert on to hear in a future case. But this particular decision doesn't go to that issue about things like large capacity magazines or assault rifles.
I want to play another piece of sound from the oral argument today. It seemed that many justices were concerned about the issue of public safety. I want to play an exchange with Justice Stephen Breyer.
The difference, of course, you have a concealed weapon to go hunting. You're out with an intent to shoot, say, a deer or a rabbit, which has its problems. But here, when you have a self-defense just for whatever you want to carry a concealed weapon, you go shooting it around and somebody gets killed.
With respect, Justice Breyer, that's not been the experience in the 43 jurisdictions that allow their citizens to have the same rights that my clients are looking for.
You know, one of the things, Professor, that's always struck me is that there's always this talk about hunting in connection with the Second Amendment. And yet, the whole reason that that 2008 Heller decision came down is based on what the framers had intended back when they created the Second Amendment to the United States Constitution. And when they created and wrote the Second Amendment, regardless of what you think it should or shouldn't say, it wasn't to apply to hunting. And so I wonder why in these debates there's so much talk always about hunting as opposed to what the framers had intended, which was to protect the citizens at times against its own government.
Well, I mean, there's a lot packed in that question. So, and a lot of assumptions. So, yes, you're right. The court says there's a right to have an arm in your home for personal purposes or individual purposes that are lawful, including self-defense. And that including is doing a lot of work, which might be one of the reasons why we keep talking about hunting and other kinds of recreational uses of firearms. Your latter point is one that is a point of quite a bit of contention about what exactly does the Second Amendment protect? Is it about individual self-defense? Is it really about defending ourselves from a tyrannical government? Those are the kinds of really deep philosophical questions that the court has so far not really engaged in and might have to in the future. Right now, they're solely focused on the issue of self-defense as opposed to these other reasons we might have the Second Amendment.
All right, so finally, based on what you heard today, what would be your prediction as to what the court's going to do here?
Well, you know, predictions are a mug's game, and you never know. The Obamacare sounded like it was going to go a certain way and went another way, for example. My prediction at this point is the law looks like it's going to go down, and then the question really is, how broadly will the majority write the opinion? And what kind of tools will they use to say that it is unconstitutional? Will they say it's too much discretion? Will they say there's not a law like this in 1791 and therefore it's unconstitutional? Those are the big questions that I'm going to be looking for.
Yeah, but I do think that the betting, and I know that professors don't like to do the betting stuff, the media people love to do it, so that puts us at odds right there. But in terms of the betting, based on the fact that the court took the case, based on the types of questions we heard, based on the types of justices that there are, I think the expectation is that this law will be struck down. And as you point out, the question then will be, okay, how broad is it in terms of what they're saying and what kinds of laws can exist moving forward? But to be clear, this wouldn't mean that people can't have gun control laws at all.
No, not at all.
Right.
Heller itself still has limits. It's just going to put a lot of pressure on governments that want to regulate firearms in these other ways that they can say, for example, schools can bar weapons. It's going to put a lot more pressure on those other areas as opposed to a licensing scheme.
Right. Professor Darrell Miller, thank you so much for coming on the show. Really appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you for watching. Click the red subscribe button below so you can get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.